Checking on them, okay? All right. How y'all feel? I feel good. I have been enjoying this series thus far, talking about vision. And I pray that as we've gone through vision for self, vision for family, vision for church, that you have gotten something encouraging from it. I pray that it's caused you to grow and deepen your resolve to follow Christ. Today we're going to conclude with talking about vision for relationship with God. Vision for relationship with God. And Sister Ella, I feel pretty good. I might holler today. I might holler. We'll see. Philippians chapter 3. And Father, we pray that even now, God, that you give me singleness of thought. God, help me to focus and rely totally on you. Preach through me, preach for me. God, I pray now that you crucify the flesh and resurrect the spirit. Lord God, I pray now that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Philippians chapter 3. I'm going to lift up one verse, and that's verse 10. When you found it, say amen. I'm going to read from the Amplified Bible, the Classic Edition, and then I'll jump down to the King James. But I like the way the Amplified reads. It says, "For my determined purpose is that I may know him, that I may progressively become more deeply and intimately acquainted with him, perceiving and recognizing and understanding the wonders of his person more strongly and more clearly, and that I may in the same way come to know the power overflowing from his resurrection, which exerts over believers, and that I may so share his suffering as to be continually transformed in the spirit into his likeness, even to death in the hope." King James says, "That I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering, being made comfortable unto his death." You may be seated. Again, what I'll talk about as we conclude this vision series, Vision with God. Uncle John, I have learned that getting to know people is tricky. When it comes to getting to know a person, most often, truth is, we only know their name. And because we know their name, we feel we know them. And I've come to learn that oftentimes we have fan club mentalities of people without a real relationship. And I want us to, as we go throughout the rest of this year, not to have just a fan club mentality of who Jesus is. Because it doesn't matter if you can recount his miracles. It really doesn't matter if you can tell how many blind eyes he opened, how many 5,000 or 4,000 he fed, and that's not even counting the women and the children. It doesn't matter if you can recount all the miracles. It doesn't matter if you can tell me how many times he stopped funeral processions. It don't matter if you can tell me how many times he parted Red Seas or parted the Jordan. It doesn't matter if you can tell me how many times he brought somebody out. It does not matter matter if you can tell me how many people he raised from the dead. It does not matter how many times you can tell me he cried or why he cried or the reason that led him to cry in the first place. It doesn't even matter if you can articulate adequately what he did when he went into the temple. None of that really matters if you don't know him, because a lot of times you can know of a person and gives you the ideal that I know them, and because you think you know them, when you stand to speak concerning them, you find yourself speaking in error, because the only thing you know is the characteristics of a person, but you don't know the person and the purpose of a person. Talk, boy, I'm going to preach this thing till I'm through. And I want you to understand that this year we cannot afford to do the same thing. We cannot afford to approach God the same way. We cannot afford to keep saying that we know God, but everything we do shows that we're just acquainted, but we don't have relationship. And I don't want to be in a church where there are people who are acquainted with God. I want to be in a church where people got relationship with God, because relationship is what keeps you in the midnight hour. Relationship is what keeps you from going tick, tick, boom. Relationship is what keeps you centered and focused. It's relationship. It's not the ability of you being able to quote my stats. It's your ability to talk to my pain. It's your ability to talk about me when I'm at my lowest and still help folk understand that I'm still worthwhile, that there's still something good about me. You got to have relationship. I remember some 16, 15 years ago, I was in a church service, and I was sitting there, and Deacon Pete, the Lord was moving. I was directing the choir. I was doing my thing. Offering time rolled around. It rolled around, and I'm looking at the church. While I was watching the church, Uncle Johnny, don't judge me, but while I was watching the church, I saw a vision. It was a vision of beauty. I saw God, Sister Karen, in a way I hadn't seen him before. And while I was sitting there, I said, I've got to know her. I've got to know. I'm talking about my wife, excuse me. But I was watching her as she walked and sashayed around the offering pan. And I was sitting there saying, I've got to know her, and I need to meet her, and people knew her name, but they didn't know her, and I didn't want to just know her name. I wasn't singing. You remember that song by Jodeci? I just want to come and talk to me, because I really want to meet you, girl. I really want to know your. Yeah, okay. Don't act like you ain't never heard the song before. And that's where I was. That's where I was. I was like, come and talk to me, and I couldn't catch her. I couldn't catch her because before benediction got cold, she was in her car and out the door. But the way God works, because God looks at the intent of your heart, because my wanting to know her was pure. It was with good intention, because I saw her and I said, man, if I get her on my arm, boy, I know I can do some things. And so as Providence would have it, God let me teach a class, and guess who was my student? Yes, she was. She was my student in the classroom. And while she was my student in the classroom, I began to talk to her, and I had to hit it with the biggie stuff, because I wasn't interested in her sign. I didn't want to know none of that. I wanted to know what her interests were, and who she wanted to be with, the things that made her smile, and what numbers to dial, if she was going to be here for a while, you can call. Yeah, I wanted to know that kind of stuff, And so what happened, as Providence would have it, we began to converse. As we conversed, and I talked to her. Conversation at times led to tears. Conversation at times led to smiles. Matter of fact, I think it was somewhere around 150 questions I might have asked in one night. But the point is, I had to know her. And the reality is, you don't get to know a person
until you spend some intimate time alone with a person. Yeah. God help me, I'm going to preach this thing till I'm through. And the reality is, my beloved brothers and sisters, in this day and time, in order for us to know God, we have to spend some intimate time with God. And I've come to tell you that if your vision for this year in knowing God and developing your relationship with God is not involved with you spending intimate time with him, I want you to know you don't have a relationship, you just got an acquaintance. Because acquaintances are people who can come by every now and then, but you don't want them to tarry long. But you know, when you have relationship with people, you can't wait for them to come over. You bring out all the stops when you know they coming into town. And you know, and when we get to the place of our worship experience, we have to get so involved and so engulfed in what we want God to see in us that we've got to make sure that we're in proper position and relationship with him. Because truth of the matter is, and I'm going to walk it slow. I got about 25 more minutes. I feel like hollering though. But the truth of the matter is, until you can see in my darkness, you really can't see me. Because it's easy to be around me when everything is going good. Oh, you want to act like that, huh? Oh, you know you're the most joyful person when things is going your way. Everybody wants to be in your presence when things are going good. Everybody wants to love on you when things are going good. But the people who really know you, Uncle Johnny, they know how to see beyond your smile that you faking, because everybody around you wants you to think that everything is going good. But no, when I really know you, I can tell when you smiling 3/4 on one side and 1/4 on the other side. I can tell you off center. You ain't where you really need to be. And see, that's where God wants us. That's the relationship that God desires for us to have with him. That one where he sees and he knows that we know that every time I tell a little lie, that little white lie, you know, the one, that one. When every time I do that person, what a dirty, you know, every time I'm petty on purpose, he says, I want you to understand that's not representing me well. And so here, the Apostle Paul helps us and gives us a roadmap to understand how our relationships need to be. You don't mind if I preach, do you? Here, the Apostle Paul shows us how our vision for relationship with God, what it should look like. Watch this. Paul says that I may know him. First of all, Paul, who is him? I remember, you know, I like Kings of Comedy, and, you know, when Bernie Mac was talking about his grandchildren, and he was talking about the little one, you know, the youngest child, and talking about how the youngest child, it was the middle one, how he went downstairs to get some cookies. Y'all seen Kings of Comedy, don't act like you ain't never seen it. She went down to get some milk and cookies, and, you know, he came back up, and the little one asked him, where you go, where the cookies and stuff? And he said, you know, him downstairs. He said him as if he didn't have no name. And Paul wants us to know, first of all, when you can't just classify a person as him, but you got to say what his name is, because when you say the name, it gives validity. When you say the name, it substantiates that this person does exist. When you say the name, it means that this person has a place in your life. When you say the name, it means you are really intrigued by this person. When you say the name, that means they mean something to you. I don't want to just know him. I want to know Jesus. And how do you want to know Jesus, Paul? Paul says, I want to know him in the power of what? His resurrection. I just don't want a fan club mentality of Jesus. I don't want nobody to keep telling me about Jesus. I want to know him. And Paul says, he opens it up though. He says, that I may know him. And in other words, in order to know somebody, you've got to be intimate with somebody. And see, a lot of y'all know a whole lot of folk that y'all should have never been intimate with, but that's a message for another time. But I want you to know now, in this day and time, in this season of your life, you've got to know him. I don't care if your mama know him, you got to know him. I don't care if your grandmama know him, you got to know him. And Paul says that I may know him. In other words, I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position so that I can get close, because I don't want nobody getting close to me that I can't get close to. I don't want nobody knowing me that I don't get a chance to know. I want to see you at your worst. I want to see you at your best. He said, I want to know him in the power of his resurrection. I want to know him at the height of his purpose. And you got to understand, Dickie Pete, that some people only want to know you because they know your purpose. God, I feel like preaching, and I'm tired of people. I don't want you this year to be duped by people who only want your purpose. You need to tell your neighbor, my purpose ain't for sale. You can't buy me, and because you really don't know me, that's why you think these little trinkets and stuff excite me. No, the thing that excites me is the fact that God is still dealing with me. The thing that excites me is the fact that he's still speaking despite my shortcomings, despite my failures. I want to know him. Paul says, I want to know him because I need to see if he was truly the promised Messiah. I heard all this stuff about him, but I need to know him because I want to know if it's true. Okay. I don't want to tell him myself and get myself in trouble. But baby, just remember this was before you, okay? This was before you, honey. Just remember this was before you. I don't want no trouble at home. I don't, Lord, I don't want no trouble at home. But see, there were times, in my younger days, I thought I was the bee's knees. You couldn't tell me I wasn't the cat's meow and the dog's bow wow. You couldn't tell me I wasn't all of that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I would walk and saunter into a room, boy. You couldn't tell me nothing. I mean, nothing on top of nothing. You couldn't tell it to me. And when I would walk in the room and I would deal with people, people would say, I only want to deal with you because of what I heard. They didn't want me, Sister Karen. They wanted my reputation. and Paul says, I don't want him for reputation. I want them for purpose. God help me. And see, you got to understand, when people only want you for your reputation, that means they only want to use you and get out of you what they can get out of you. And once they're done using you, they're going to drop you off to the side and they're going to go on and get somebody else. That's why they always was asking, are you the one or should we look for another? Because we want somebody that we can use to our purpose and bend to our benefit and move to our will. And Paul says, listen, I don't want to know you based on me. I want to know you because of what I heard about you. And if what I heard about you is true, then I want the relationship with you that's going to get me where I need to be, that's going to straighten me out when I get crooked. But first of all, I got to know you. And are you the one? Are you the promised Messiah? Because he wanted to know, are you the one who salvation you was bought by his blood? I want to know, are you the one that have the proper purpose to get us out of what we're in? Because they told us you was coming, and I know a lot of folk jumping up, but I need to know before I cast my lots with you. I want to know before I start turning away from family. I want to know before I put the weed down. I want to know before I stop smoking. I want to know before I stop drinking. I want to know before I stop bed hopping. I want to know before I stop cussing out. I'll get to your street in a minute. Just keep sitting there. I want to know before I stop doing all those lascivious and mischievous activities. I want to know you. Paul says it's imperative that we understand that as we enter into relationship, we understand who he is. I know some people, and a lot of people know my name, but very few people know me. And truth, Sister Ella, I tell you, trust you won't tell nobody. I pray you're not going to judge me. But folk who really know me, they know you only got so far you can push me. And folk who who really know me. They know how far they can go with me. And okay, your husband know you. And, he know when you say, all right, yeah, then when you say, all right, it's different. It shifts the tone of the relationship. And here it is, because a lot of us don't really know God. We just know of God, and we don't have real relationship with God. When God starts saying, all right, we keep on doing what we're doing because we have taken God's grace for granted as if he owes it to us. And that's why Paul asked the question, should we continue to sin because grace abounds? Paul says, God forbid. Why? Because if you really know him, you understand that you cannot continue to walk this walk and live this life according to how you want to and not do anything based on his orders, his rules, and his precepts. That's why Paul says, I need to know you, the person of who you is. And not only do I want to know you, but I want to know you in the power of your resurrection. Paul wants to know Jesus so much that so his body and his flesh that was born in humiliation and is raised from the dead because he's now saved and covered under the blood. He wanted to make sure that in knowing God, in the power of his resurrection, that when he came up out of whatever he was in, that he will be made to look just like him. See? You ever seen people who were together so long, they start looking alike? So, what's your relationship got you looking like? Can I look at you and see semblances of who he is? I ought to be able to look at you, Pete, and see some God-like characteristics. I ought to be able to look at you and hear some God kind of conversation. I ought to be able to look at you because you've been walking this thing for a little while. But if I don't ever see anything that resembles the one you say you've been connected to for a long time, I mean, every child may not look exactly like their parent, but you ought to see something that resembles the parent. And people tell me all the time, "Ooh, your daughter Ajane looks just like you." You lying. She don't. She looks just like her mama. But you can't tell me she ain't mine, because even what she don't have in look, she might pick up an attitude. And so every now and then, because she look like her mama, she'll just stand there and look at you. If you say something to her sideways, she ain't gonna respond that she get that from her daddy. And I just want you to know there ought to be something about your look, something about your conversation that looks like. He says, I feel it now. He says, I want to know him in the power of his resurrection. And then Paul flips the script, because not only do I want to know you in your popularity, not only do I want to know you in your purpose, not only do I want to know you on the good days, not only do I want to know you at your birthday party, not only do I want to know you at your anniversary, he says, I want to know you and the fellowship of your suffering. Now, you got to understand this whole thing called fellowship, because fellowship is a word that means everybody's in the same boat. See, I'm out here now. Let me give it to you like this. A lot of us want relationship without fellowship. See, relationship without fellowship equates to usury. Okay. Can I make it plain? Can I make it plain, please? Okay. If you only want me for what I got, but don't want me for what I go through, you really don't want me. And so Paul is saying, I don't just want God for who he is. I want everything that's involved with him, because that's the only way I can really know him, is to go through everything he's gone through, and I can't shy away from it. So in other words, you can't be shying away from being talked about. You can't shy away from being lied on. You can't shy away from being persecuted. You can't shy away from not being invited. You can't shy away from not being the hype of the party. No, you got to know him in the fellowship. of his suffering. Now, the suffering, you've got to understand, does not always mean that it's going to be a quick process. Suffering sometimes means you got to go through it for a little while. Because when Jesus was on his way to Golgotha, it wasn't an overnight thing. No, it was a process. They put him through some stress. They put him through some torture. And I want you to know, if you're going to have real relationship with God this year, you got to be willing to suffer a little while. He says, to fellowship with him in suffering is to have the mindset of marriage. I said, what you mean, Paul? Paul said, when you get married, they tell you for rich or for poor. For better or worse. Sickness and health. What's the caveat? He said, to death do your part. He says you got to have that type of fellowship with Jesus. You got to desire that kind of fellowship with him. You know, that kind for richer or poor. That means, you know, sometimes I might be up, but most days I might be down. He said in sickness and in health. Sometimes I'll go to the doctor. They give me a grade A, and other times I go, they tell me I got diabetes. He said for better or worse. Some days everybody loves me, and some days people can't stand me. He says till death do you part. For God I live, and for God I'll die. You got to have that kind of mindset when you're chasing relationship with God, because this year your vision has got to change. You can't get close to God based on what you can get, but you need to get close to God based on what you can give him, based on what you can do. What did you come to do? Boy, I'm glad you asked me. I came here to give God my hallelujah. I came to give God my thank you, Jesus. I came to give God my amen. I came to give my bless you, Lord. I came to give my thank you, Jesus. I came to give, there's no other name given under heaven whereby men might be saved except the name of Jesus. I've got relation. Paul says that you got to know him. Yes, sir. Now watch this. You can't know him in the fellowship of his suffering just so that you can be counted as being one of his. Paul was showing us that he wanted to know him because he was willing to imitate him even as a martyr of death. And so my question to you really is, do you want to know God to the place where you can die like he did? Okay, I know this ain't the kind of stuff you wanted to hear, but I want you to understand that this year we've got to get serious about our walk with God. We got to get serious about our call for Christ. We got to get serious about what we've come to do, because so many times we keep coming to church doing the same old thing, and that's why it don't look any different, because God's trying to figure out, who are you? Because I really don't know you. You keep calling my name, but I don't know you. Every now and then when I'm out on the street, somebody say, hey, Parks, how you doing? And because I don't know them, but everybody knows my name, I don't know that I'm standing there and I'm just looking, and they saying, why are you looking at me like that? Then they say, oh, you don't know who I am? No, I don't. And then they have to go through and recount for me why it is they think I ought to know them. But truth is, God does not have to recount why it is you ought to know. He ought to know you. You need to be recounting why God ought to know you, why you need to know him. Lord, I need to know you because you brought my mama out. I need to know you because you kept me from the accident. I need to know you because you put food on my table. I need to know you because you gave me health and strength. I need to know you because you kept me from losing my mind. I need to know you because you are good. You are gracious. You're kind and you're wonderful. I need to know you. He says, I want to know you in the areas that other folk run from. All right. I want to know you in the stuff that's going to cause me to feel some pain sometimes. Because my need for relationship with you is greater than my need to be comfortable. God help me. I don't want to make nobody mad. I got 10 minutes. I'm about to raise on up out of here. I want to know him, or you should want to know him, because he has proven he's worth knowing. What does that mean? Glad you asked me. Well, you ever met somebody, created a relationship, and then soon after, you regretted the day you ever met them? Now, if you just look straight ahead, don't look to the left or to the right, because you might be sitting with them. We don't want nobody to know you talking about them. But you done met some people, Sister Brenda, and you rue the day you ever cross paths. You ready to pull your hair out. As a matter of fact, every time you hear their name, it does something to you, and it ain't in a positive way either. It do something to you. It gets you to itching something. Sometimes I hear names and I just break out in hives, because I remember. Okay, I just talk about me. Y'all just look at me. I remember, because the relationship was so tumultuous. It was so traumatic to my psyche, and I get tired of dealing with people who just want to manipulate and control and contort and twist words. You might as well just be a pretzel, because you twist everything that somebody say. I mean, I get worried about folk like that. But Paul says, I want to know you even in the midst of all that, because everything that people have said about Christ has not always been positive. Everything they've said about Christ has not always been good. And Paul says, I'm not going to distance myself from you because people talking bad about you. I ain't going to do you like you do me. He says, to know him in the fellowship of his suffering. Now, Uncle Johnny, you read the Bible. You went to school a little bit and all that good stuff. You understand that if you gonna fellowship with me, that means you purposely leave where you are to come to where I am. Y'all missing me. You're missing me. He says, I want to fellowship. I'm going to leave what I have to chase after what I want. But in chasing after what I want, I might lose what I have. Jesus. And he said, I want to know you like that, to where I don't care about what I lose, because I'm only looking to gain. And even in the suffering, even in going through with you, because I'm still with you, I'm still gaining. I'm still coming out on top. This year, you got to make it a point to have your relationship so intact with God that it does not matter what you go through, because you still coming out on top. This year, make sure that you seek him. You got to make sure that you seek him, and you got to live in him and have fellowship with him. See, you can't have real fellowship if you ain't in him. Oh, God help me. See, a lot of us in a lot of stuff, but we ain't in him. Oh, okay. Your name coming up in a lot of conversations, but Jesus ain't never surrounding it. I don't understand. You got fellowship, but you ain't in him. And this year, we got to make it up in our mind that our relationship with God has to be so much so that I don't give, I can't say it like I want to. My grandma and the mothers are in here, but if y'all meet me outside, I'll tell you a thing or two. I done got to the place now where I done made up in my mind, I don't care who I got to cut loose. I'm going after God. I don't care what I got to cut loose. I'm going after God. I'm going to chase after him. In the morning and in the night, I'm chasing after him. Why you chasing him, Parks? Because I found out that he's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. I found out that he is a lamb in the midst of wolves. I found out that he is a dove in the midst of vultures. I found out that he is peace in the midst of a storm. I found out that if I put my trust in him and I trust in the Lord with all my heart, I ain't got to worry about what I understand. Why? Because I ain't leaning on that no way. And in all my ways, I'm going to acknowledge him, and he's going to direct my path. That's why I'm chasing chasing after him. I'm chasing him because he's been good. I'm chasing him because he's been fine. I'm chasing him because he's been faithful. What you doing this year? I'm putting my relationship on 100 because I want God. But you can't get him half-cocked. You can't get him dibbling and dabbling. You got to decide if you're going to get God, you got to go after him. But you understand, you got to be willing to deal with the suffering that's going to come. Because everybody wants God because of all the good stuff. They want him for the house. He'll give you one. But he didn't say your furnace was always work. Everybody wants God for the car. But he didn't say that your windows won't bust sometime. Everybody wants God for the mate. But he didn't say that you're going to agree every day. Everybody wants God for the pay increase. But he didn't say that with more money, you was gonna have more problems. Come on here, Biggie. You know, and so the more of God we want, the more we have to understand that we are opening ourselves up to enter into this area of fellowship that ain't for the faint at heart. Everybody can't handle suffering. Now, Sister Claire, everybody can talk about your suffering. But everybody can't handle suffering. And to be able to handle suffering makes you more like Christ than you think. Because when you look at Christ, the suffering that he went through, although he didn't like it, he didn't complain. Okay, y'all looking at me funny. 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh, and we on. When you look at Christ's road to Calvary, in all that he had to endure, not once, even Scripture records, he opened not his mouth. If we in fellowship, and I'm going down, and they tell you, hey, we'll lighten your sentence if you tell on him. Most of y'all will be free today because you singing like a canary. But to fellowship with Christ, they said if you deny him and if you forget that you know him, then, your life will be easy. That's what the devil tells you. You ain't got to say, hey, man, I know he talks to you because he talks to me. And he'll tell you, if you stop following him, I'm telling you, them folk don't want to be bothered with you no way. The people on your job, they all, they don't really care nothing about this God stuff you doing. And you see how good they're doing because they ain't got God and they seem to be doing better than you. They got more money than you. And you keep paying your tithes and you ain't got nothing to show for it. I mean, why don't you just give up just a little while? It really ain't gonna matter. They ain't gonna miss it this 1 week. You need to take care of yourself. You deserve to go ahead and get your nails done. You need to go ahead and get you a haircut. You can go on and take you a spa day. It's okay. Take some time out for you. That's what it means. That's what the devil wants to do. The devil wants to separate you from God because he understands that if your relationship gets real tight with God, then you'll know God in the way that he knew God, and he knows how God really is. He knows who God really is. And so therefore, if anybody's trying to tell you who really know him to not get close to him, they're not telling you because it's for your benefit, but it's for theirs. Because anytime somebody don't want you to have a relationship that has the ability to change your life, anytime somebody don't want you to have a relationship that has the ability to set you on straight street, don't really care nothing about you. And so why you keep listening to folk who done already proved they don't care nothing about you? No way. And here it is, God has sent his only begotten son down 42 generations to come and die for you. He sat there on the cross and not once did he say, I didn't do it, but they're the guilty party. Not once did he say, put it on them and take it off me. No, he put it all on his back and he carried it. Paul says, I want to hang with him in his suffering. Why? Because he suffered for me, and so now I can suffer for him. Relationships are not easy. But to know him means you are getting rid of the games and distractions. But you are making your intercessions and your intentions known. You letting it all out that you care more about him than you care about you. And I got to close, but I want you to know that if you care more about him than he cares, or than you care about you, then you too can live the scripture that says, cast all your cares upon him. What are you saying? I heard that somebody said a long time ago that when you cast your cares and you put bread in the ocean, put a little jelly on it while you're doing it, because when it all comes back to you, it's going to come back better than what you gave it. I just want you to know that this year, as you prove your relationship, this year, as you search and chase after God, put some sweet on it while you at it. Every now and then when you come in here, don't just come in and sit down, but come in with the praise. God help me. Come in with a thank you, Jesus. Come in with the dance, because I promise you that if your relationship with him goes up another level, everything about you is about to change. The way they see you is about to change. The next time you go to the bank, it's about to change. The next time you at the car lot, it's about to change. Why? Because I know him in the fellowship of his suffering and what the Father did for him, because I'm connected to his son. I'm going to get the overflow of what it is he got. I'm going to get the overflow of the joy. I'm getting overflow of peace. This year, my relationship. I ain't being funny. I just want more God than more you. You know, Pete, you my man, 100 grand. You know, we down like 4 flats in the Cadillac in the back. That's where we at. But I still take God over you. Yes, sir. This year, be intentional with your relationship. Stop making excuses on why you ain't close to God. Stop making excuses on why you don't come and serve. No, if you really got a relationship, I ought to look at you. And I ought to say, last time I seen him, he didn't look quite like that. Come on, preacher. But this time, man, he's looking more and more like God. And you know, those who ain't got no spirituality, they gonna tell you, I don't see it. But then you got to tell them, see, the reason you can't see it is because you ain't got a relationship. Because the truth is, I don't care how distant we are. If we family, I know my family when I see my family. Because everybody in my family got this funny shaped nose. And you know, everybody in my family got this strange dialect. We all talk a certain way. Even when we ain't trying to talk a certain way. We all act a certain way, even when we ain't trying. And when I see you, I ought to be able to see something about God in you. Tell your neighbor this year, get to know him. Get to know him. Not only just know of him, but get to know him. And the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering. Now, I wish I could tell you, you'll never have another problem because you know him. I want to tell you that. I wish I could put it on the cards and give them to people and tell them, if you come to this church, we're going to push you to get relationship, and when you get it, you'll never have another problem. Wish I could tell you that. But I remember Romans 8:28 said, for we know. So you can't miss that for we know, because that for we know suggests we done already had a prior conversation about this. It says, for we know all things work together for the good of them that love God and are called according his purpose. You can't seek relationship with God this year for your purpose. It has to be for his purpose. And if you fulfill his purpose, he'll handle your stuff. Is that all right? Because he did say, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For my yoke is easy and my burdens are. So if I give him my stuff and I take his stuff, it's on him to fix his stuff when it go wrong. But because I gave him my stuff, it's now on him to fix my stuff when it go wrong. I call that the great exchange. And so I just want to encourage you this year as you move this year, seeking vision for yourself, for your family, fulfilling vision for the church, and vision for your relationship with God. This is how you need to make sure that you know him. You don't want to just know God because of hard houses and cars. Praying that you're going to hit the lottery. The reason he ain't let you hit the millions because he know you ain't going to tie it with him. I know you was playing. But why would he give you more if he can't trust you with the little? Oh, God, I want overflow. You only call him when you want something. I'm through. But I know some folk that I only hear from. They only know me when they need something. As long as they don't have a need, they don't know me. God is saying that he wants the relationship to change. Don't just know him when you need something. But he needs you to know him when everything is going okay. Because I tell y'all, we family. I had a text exchange with one of my relatives. And, you know, so I thank God for my wife. Because in this text exchange, my relative started going off. I mean, the boy went off. And she had to show my wife the phone. Because, you know, I told you, you don't really know me. But folk know how far they can go, Sister Claire. And so before I said something that will erase all of God's goodness, I had to catch myself. So before I responded, I gave the phone to my wife. I said, you need to look at this. And that's how I have to operate with God, because when I get some stuff, I can't just respond. I say, God, you got to look at this. You got to look at it. And then showing it to my wife, Sister Ella, you know, she looked at it and then she cocked that grin. And see, when she grins, sometimes I'm giddy and other times I'm nervous because I don't necessarily know what I'm about to get. And you know, she says, respond. I said, you sure? She said, respond. I said, okay. I responded, but I told them first of my suffering. Come on, preacher. And then I reminded them that in my suffering, you wasn't fellowshipping with me. But I'm coming out of this. And when I come out of this, you still ain't fellowshipping with me. Because you don't have the relationship that I have. And because you think you got the relationship you got, you think you can talk to me any old kind of way. And God had to pull me back and reel me back in and remind me that you are here for my purpose. And because you're here for my purpose, you can't say what you want to say and you can't do it how you want to do it. Even though they may be attacking you, you here for my purpose. You here for my glory. You are to do my will. And so every time you open up your mouth, you got to show that you in fellowship with me. So while my response wanted to show I still had to show that I was connected to him in the fellowship of his suffering. What are you saying? It ain't gonna always be easy. But the longer you keep your relationship intact, the easier it becomes when you're going through various stages of life. This year, you are going to be an overcomer. This year is going to be a good year for you. It's going to be a good year for your family. It's going to be a good year for your church. But make sure your relationship is real. Don't run from God in your suffering. No, Paul said, I wanted to know him in the midst of it. Because if I can handle knowing God in the middle of his suffering, my suffering ain't got nothing coming. So I want you to know that this year, whatever you're facing, you can make it. You can make it. You can. I get this because I'm through. I ain't telling you something I think is going to happen. We've done exegetical investigation of proof, and we have now proof of what can happen if we follow the scriptorial roadmap. There is nothing that God does not want you to have, but what you want has to reflect him. It has to have a link to him. So back to my wife. After I got to know her, I said, wait a minute. God, I wasn't ready for that responsibility because, you know, the weight of knowing somebody means you got to carry what they carry. So I ran from it. And in running from it, it caused me to be rebellious. And it caused me to miss God in some areas of my life. But when I made up in my mind that God, I'm gonna do it your way. I'm gonna do it how you say it, and I ain't gonna deviate from it. I came back home and she was right there waiting. What are you saying? God loves you even in your disobedience. But don't make it a habit of being disobedient so that you're abusing God's grace. When I realized I had the grace because she was still there, I did everything I could to ensure I never lose the grace again. What are you saying? This year, my beloved, do everything you can to make sure that you don't jeopardize your relationship. I know you love family. I know you love friends. I know you love people. But some stuff just plain old ain't healthy. Some attitudes just plain old ain't healthy. And if they're causing you to miss the mark with God, it ain't healthy. Doctor tells you if you're trying to get well, cut out the stuff that's killing you. But Ernie, that's all I'm trying to tell him. Cut out the stuff that's killing you. Stop worrying. Stop stressing. You don't have the power to change people, but you got the power to change you. You can't make anybody do nothing. But you can make sure that you get yourself together. This year, I ain't chasing after people. I want God. And I want to know him in an intimate way. I want to know him in a personal way. So Paul says, I'm going to show you what it looks like. Get to know him. The power of his resurrection. And in the fellowship of his suffering. And even that may mean sometimes unto death. But if I know him in death, then I'll know him in life. Come on, give God praise.